style Karl Rove back in. So, Karl, yesterday the news was that that Bill's Precept guy, after he had spoken to Comey and also Andrew McCabe, he wrote that note. What's our goal? Truth, admission, or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired? And now we see that apparently the Crossfire Hurricane team, they would look for dirt, couldn't find any. They closed it on January the 4th, 2017, and yet Peter Strzok, who was fired for misconduct, winds up saying, hold off. As we just heard from Griff, there are a number of Republicans who are saying, we got to know more stuff about this. But the president is sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He sees this. He referred to him as dirty cops yesterday. And now he's thinking about a pardon for Mr. Flynn. If he does, what does America say to that?
Well, first of all, let's step back for just a minute, because remember, the original intent of the Peter Strzok directed investigation was to find out whether Michael Flynn was, quote, directed, controlled by, or coordinated activities, end quote, with Russia. And when they could find no evidence of that whatsoever, there's a recommendation to close the investigation. It's after that point that they try and go after Flynn for having talked to the Russian ambassador during the transition period and in order to prosecute him under the Logan Act, 1799, an act passed by John Adams and the Federalist Congress when Adams was upset about a guy named Dr. Logan who he thought trying to portray himself as representing the U.S. government abroad. It's deemed to be largely unconstitutional. Only 2 prosecutions have ever been tried under it. Neither one have succeeded. The last one was 150 years ago. And the idea that the incoming national security advisor should not, during the transition period, have contact with the Russian ambassador is laughable. But that's only part of all of this. We also have this issue of, and clearly, Peter Strzok being in charge of this, they were trying to get Flynn on whatever they could. So when they couldn't find that he was directed, controlled by, or coordinated activities with the Russians, they then try and get him on this really stupid thing of the Logan Act. But we do also have this separate issue of his failure to register as a foreign agent, being paid by the Turkish government through an intermediary, I think from in the Netherlands, in order to try and get an opponent, a political opponent of the Turkish government that lives in the United States, extradited to Turkey, which would probably have resulted in that man's death. That's a separate issue. I would say this. Bill Barr, Attorney General, has appointed Jeffrey Jensen, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri, to investigate all of these things around Flynn. And I think we ought to suspend our complete judgment until he completes his investigation. These documents came out as a result of his investigation. We now know, looking at this one part of the Flynn case, that Strzok was trying to get him on a completely phony deal after failing to come up with any evidence on the more substantive issue of directed, controlled by, or coordinating activities with Russia. It sure stinks, at least this part of it, but let's wait until Jensen gets all of his work done.
Karl, when you take a step back, as you always like to do, and analyze whether there is a deep state and whether they were out to look at the Mueller report, the impeachment, and now the Flynn investigation, when you look at all that, do you believe there was a plot to get the president, or is it simple opposition to the president that we see in every other administration? What is your analysis as of today?
No, look, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, what we have seen of these were rogue agents in very powerful positions who were acting in a completely inappropriate way. When we look at the activities of James Comey, we see an inappropriate activity by the director of the FBI. Now, there's no way that you can excuse things that those people did. I trust the FBI generally, but we had some bad actors, and we've now seen a trail of email messages, love texts between Strzok and Page, Comey's activities, Comey's actions. I mean, Comey lies to the President of the United States, says, no, we don't have Flynn under investigation. Well, at that very moment, he knew that he was under investigation and that they were focused on the Logan Act, for God's sake. I mean, please. the idea that you're going to knock out the national security advisor because he had a conversation with the Russian ambassador, and you can't get him on the substantive issue, directed, controlled by, or coordinating activities with, and instead you're going to go after him under the Logan Act, is laughable. Now, but again, we got to be a little bit careful because we have some other things that are pre-Trump administration activities. Failure to register as a foreign agent, that's a serious question. Again, let's withhold judgment on the whole galaxy of things until U.S. Attorney Jensen finishes his work.
Yeah, they ruined his life because of that phone call, or that conversation. Do you think that the president should still pardon him, though, or should he wait till Jensen completes that investigation?
I think the American people would feel better about whatever action the president decides to make if Jensen completes his activity, makes a report, and we have time as the American public to gnaw over it. Yes, clearly on the issue of going after him for his conversation with Ambassador Sisolak, that we now know enough to conclude this was Peter Strzok. This maybe was part of his insurance policy activities to get the President of the United States. But let's wait until Jensen does all of his work. I think the President would be well advised to wait until all of that is done and then have, in essence, the input of an independent authority who has done a rigorous investigation of all of these issues.
And we thought they'd already done that, which apparently they have not. All right, Karl, thank you very much for joining us today from Austin. Have a great weekend.
You
Stay
bet.
safe.